Welcome to Greedy Pig Podcast, where we discuss business with self-made entrepreneurs. Today's guest is Desmone Stanford, owner of Think King clothing brand, as well as Moral Support Podcast. So Desmone, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is a pleasure. It's an honor.
Yeah, of course.
Definitely love having you on, man. Love talking to you, just hearing your thoughts on stuff. So good to finally get you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, so wanted to start the conversation off by discussing Think King clothing brand.
Yes, sir. Thinking. I love talking about the clothing brand. It always takes me to just far out there sometime, because it's so many layers to it. God gave it to me as an onion, and I'm still pulling layers back to this day, trying to figure out what all it is. So at the foundation, it's a clothing brand where, we do missionary work. When God first gave it to me, it was just a saying. It was this mentality that he, gave to me to kind of, emphasize to other people, teach to other people, if you will. Now it's like being more so ministry.
Okay.
When he gave it to me, I put it on a shirt. We ran with it from there. And it kind of just developed over time. It was like a seed. And again, it's still being cultivated so much. But a leader's mentality led with morality is what he gave to me as the quotation. And I didn't know what it meant. And he gave it to me, and he started downloading more, him being God. And as he downloaded more, we got this understanding that, okay, this is a mentality that we have to instill within other people, especially those who are leaders, so we can have leaders with morality. And
Sure. So you said, God kind of gave you the quote, right? It wasn't something you came up with or, just kind of popped in your head one day. But love the logo. Love the brand. Love what it stands for.
Thank you.
So with those values you said, how do you communicate that to your audience with your brand?
Great. So we've been so organic about our communication and our outreach with our just our community that we're building. We do a lot of pop-up shops. We do a lot of vending. We have been able to host a few events of our own as well. So just organically talking to the people and letting them know what thinking means, and just in a sense being able to find our way to minister to people at those moments.
So walk me through it. What exactly does a Think King event look like?
So we had several, and they look different every time. Our most recent was August. We had a festival. It was great, man. We were really blessed to have it in such short amount of planning, too. We had a festival at Boston Ballpark, if you're familiar.
Yeah, below the bridge.
Right. Right below the bridge. Yep, yes, sir. So we were able to get that space, and we were going to do a biking event, actually. We were just going to go along the trail, the Boston Trail, and kind of do like a walk and ride type of thing. And we was going to call it biking.
Okay.
So it kind of just started there, and they got innovated, and then we're like, how about a festival? Also because there were some other things going on that was oriented around the trail at that time that would have caused some collision. It just wasn't probably good for marketing, for actually bringing people out. So we're like, well, let's just center it here. We ran with the idea of a festival. At first, it was just a community event. We're like, well, what are we going to call it? We're going to do, and then we started thinking of ideas of what we were going to do, and it became out to be a festival in a sense of we had a bouncy house, we had a cornhole tournament, we had home run derby. We were able to feed the community free plant-based food. I'm plant-based for those who don't know, but it wasn't. That wasn't the agenda. The agenda was to create a healthy environment. The agenda of the whole festival was to create an environment that just shows the love and the morality on which we can have for one another. So when we picked our music selection, we were pretty intentional about having clean music. We actually had a gospel DJ, so he played like gospel jazz, gospel hip-hop, gospel rap. And it wasn't an idea to be gospel. It was just things that we needed to be lovely, things that are life, life being spoken in the environment and the atmosphere. So that was the same concept with the food on which we had. We had a fitness trainer who was there, who was able to arrange, some things with the kids, did some drills with the kids. So we got activities. We had somebody come by and give out backpacks. We had a number of resources that were lined up that were able to give back to the community, as far as like ADT, Chase Bank, those who were just able to be resourceful to the community in the sense of.
You guys got going there, huh? It seems like you got a big, kind of group there.
Listen, it was all God, because in a month this happened.
Okay.
Like, let me just emphasize that it happened in a month, but there was a plethora of things going on, and everything was conducive to the betterment of someone's mindset and someone's soul, if you ask me.
I think that matters a lot because, like, you obviously talk about health and wellness a lot.
Yes.
And I think that mental space and making sure you're in the mental state and the positivity and just what you put in, that's what you take out. But
Yes.
so I think all that's important because you need that to be a kind of a fully rounded person and think properly.
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah, that's impressive how many vendors you were able to get to show up. So for somebody out there watching this that wanted to start a clothing brand with a mission like you are, say things that deal with morality, positivity in the community, and they wanted to create an event like you did, how would you go about starting that and then getting vendors like that to come to it?
Okay, great. So first of all, know your purpose and your message of your clothing, because clothing speaks a message, whether you have no words on it at all or, what have you. So understand your message, understand your values, and beyond there, do things that are in alignment with that. So maybe, what we did was in alignment with where you want to take your type of event. So, kind of just measure that out, scale it, lay it out there, get a nice blueprint for it, understanding what you want your event to look like, and just fish out there. There's so many ways to fish. I simply just use my resources. I have networking communities, which I'm a part of, that I was able to say, hey, we're having this event. Come on out if you have any interest. We vetted every vendor out, making sure that they were conducive with the mission on which we had. Just doing that, we live in social media and marketing, so you can spread the message, and those who see an opportunity such as will definitely bite.
I see a lot of people wearing like the Think King stuff, especially in the gym. And I was like, I talked to a couple, and they're like, yeah, man, Desmone's a great guy. But when you first started to get people to kind of buy in, were you trying to spread the message, or did you kind of, put a couple things out there and then they start reaching out to you? Like, was it more you going to them or them coming to you eventually?
It's a good question. It's pretty organic. I never did real marketing behind it until this day, and I say we actually because there's three of us who run Think King, and we were always organic about the way we marketed Think King because it was about the message and not the clothing. And to this day, so when we were able to host events initially, is kind of how we actually launched the inauguration of the brand.
Yeah.
We had a males to men conference, it was just a males conference where we were able to, just shine our light on which we do as the brand. And we had like our first set of apparel that we had on that day, and we had a tablecloth which represented, and we were able to just emphasize like this is what thinking is. So from there, people bit onto the bait and they start understanding. They digested just a portion of it, and they sought out more of it between our podcast, because that's our way of being multifaceted to communicating what thinking is as well.
They're getting your ideas out there and stuff like
absolutely, just our ideas, and just literally living and being the brand within itself. That's like our most important thing. Like when people relate to us as thinking, those who are founders of the brand, they just see how we live our life, and they know, well, that's what thinking looks like. That's the mentality on which someone who think king, that's how they act. And that's just the most important thing which we do.
And how do you showcase those values? Is that primarily through social media posts?
We actually don't do it too much through social media. Too often is probably through our podcast. We've done a number of it through our podcast before the brand even took off. I had a inauguration to any clothing at all. We probably mentioned thinking at a number of times before we even showed like a logo to it.
That was like an idea behind it, before you actually started launching stuff.
That's it. And then from there, we just the events. The events is a big way. The events, whether it's us going to other events or us being at events, we showcase just the values of just being us, whatever that looks like, as far as the ministry on which we kind of communicate through people. That's our big way, is communication. Social media, I'm not too much of a fan. It's a great thing. It's not me per se. If someone would follow me around with a camera, it'd probably be great. But me posting up a camera and actually doing things, it gets real unauthentic for me, and I crap out.
We've been trying to get more into it because we kind of see the value in it, but it's still awkward for us because we try not to do it too much. But like, it does like feel kind of weird, right? You know, you
Yes.
guys take a time out and like take this photo or this video.
Yeah.
Like you said, it'd be much easier if you just had a recording crew just following you around.
Be great.
It's mentally taxing, but it's just a big game. It's
It
all
is.
gamification when it comes to business, but you're right, it can be used as something positive or negative.
Right. It's necessary though. It is necessary.
Yeah, I mean, it gives us the opportunity to compete and put a podcast out there and
Absolutely.
make a lot of sales with our businesses. So how old were you when you started thinking?
So 3 years ago now. So I'm 26 now, 23, about 23.
23 years old?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's when it first came to my heart anyway.
And from starting, how long did it take you to acquire your first customer?
The minute we actually got our first order and we had people lined up ready because they understood the mission before we actually got the merchandise in. So those were our internal community people who were like, they already bit onto the understanding and they were like,
They're almost waiting for it.
like they were the ones motivating us to actually get the merchandise before we got it because they're like, you're wearing it because I was wearing samples just
Sure.
like I am now. This is only a sample. And they're like, well, I want what you got on, and I'm like, well, it's coming. Just be patient with me. But the minute it came in, we gave the word out, and organically, people were
That's
like,
awesome. Yeah, we need to get business like that.
Yeah.
Or people were asking for stuff before you're even selling it.
That's very smart. So you basically pre-sold your items, so you already knew what you would be making from your initial order. So for somebody that's just starting a clothing brand, how do you recommend them getting their first, say, 10 customers?
Yes. Again, organically, showcase your message, and I'm sure no matter what your clothing values are, you have a message throughout it, whether it's just through style or fashion. Just organically wear it and embrace and embody what it means, whatever your message is. And just from there, just, kind of just exploit it a little bit. Tell people, what it is and that it's yours and where your heart lies within it. And people bite onto it. Like, people don't like to be sold anything, but they like to buy. We all know that. So if you give them something that they can possibly buy without trying to sell them, they're in for it.
Yeah, you can't be too pushy. That's a good. I never really thought, you mentioned earlier that like every clothing brand has like a message, even if it's like a plain T-shirt, right? Like I never really thought about it that way, but you're kind of right. It's like the no brand, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a cool way to look at it.
It is.
Yeah, so from there, I have my pre-orders. I've went to networking events. I've discussed what my brand is with other people. I'm starting to get some buzz. People are liking the values and what I'm creating with my brand. How do I find someone to then make this product?
This is the fun part, right?
Yeah.
This is the part I really, dread. Because it's so fluctuating. You deal with these vendors, and if you're blessed enough, maybe you can have someone in your internal that you don't have to go outsource. But me personally, I deal with like a lot of people from overseas, Pakistan, China, places such as, and the communication barriers there.
The hours. So we used to sell bracelets, and we used to handle that stuff overseas, and you're messaging them from 1 till a.m. to 3 a.m. and then you're going to sleep and they're working. So that's definitely difficult. I feel like it is kind of challenging, but I do think like there's a satisfaction when you get a better price, or like hey, we were getting these shirts for $5.
Yes.
We're down to $3.50 now.
Yeah.
Like, something like that. But it is taxing.
That's a love in it. I can never had a complaint as far as pricing so far. The prices are pretty much super fair. Like they're more so unfair to the people I'm buying from.
It's
if
almost
I'm being
like
honest.
how could they get sell
I kind of
for
feel bad sometimes. I'm like, but I mean, their business is their business.
Yeah.
Their price is their price. So how can I argue it? But it's interesting though, because you vet out. There's a many sources. In this day and age now, clothing is pretty popular. So there's a lot of popular. What do you call them? What do you call these people now? Influencers. A lot of popular influencers now who are like teaching the clothing game, and they're giving like a lot of resources as far as vendors that you can find. I found mine's pretty organically through. Actually, one I found, I was literally at the airport one day, and I was talking to a guy, and he gave me some merchandise he had on hand, and I was like, hey, this is nice, where'd you get this from? He's like, hit up this guy on WhatsApp and connect, and we did that, and I literally was like my vendor for about 1.5 years before, things got inconsistent, and we had to find a new one.
Yeah. That's smart. So you went to somebody whose product you already liked, and then they were nice enough to give you their supplier.
Yes. Blessing.
Yeah. Any other tips you would have when finding suppliers?
Yeah, always, do your homework. don't be scared to ask the questions that seem offensive sometimes, as far as, just like having an expectation and a standard of what product is going to actually look like, what quality it's going to look like, as far as the process, as far as shipping, because there's a lot of things that you just won't get informed on if you don't ask. And you can't be mad once you put an order in and it takes 2 months to come back because you didn't ask how much, how long it might take. And these are things that you run into. But there's many variables that you do have to learn just organically, as far as the process of dealing with vendors, and it will be different according to the vendor that you're dealing with. So, there's many things that I dealt differently between China and Pakistan, as far as language barriers, as far as communication, as far as timing, and pricing too.
The timing was a big one for us because when we were selling bracelets, we didn't realize like the first year we started doing that about like Chinese New Year, where they don't work for a month or month and a half. Yes. So like we knew by this date we had to place our order in, and again we had to ask like when's the last day, because trying to go 2 months without product, especially when you're booming, right? You can't do that. So that's something you got to look into. And the shipping is a good one too, because they'll say this, or they'll say it takes this long to make, but you usually have to ask about the shipping. And that's, from China overseas or, to us, it could be an extra month and a half or a month. So it's definitely something to ask the questions for sure, more than you'd think.
Yes.
Yeah, so with the suppliers then, you find a supplier you like. Mm-hmm. How do you negotiate with them?
So that's great. So instantly I like to instill just the values of my brand when I talk to them initially, letting them know like this is where our values lie as a brand. So hopefully they can find some type of respect for it. And it seems to work pretty good so far. I like to think so anyway, just because, when you are vetting out vendors, you want to kind of create a relationship. That's the goal anyway. You don't want to have to deal with a different vendor every time you order something.
Agreed.
The inconsistency is not fun. It's not fun at all.
You got to start from scratch every single time,
You
right?
do. You're like you're dating, It's like I'm dating another person now, and I got to get to know this new person and what they have to offer me. I don't know. So it's scary out there, man. But, authentically, you tell them the values of your brand, and then you just vet out all those things that you're looking for within them. Like, are they active wear clothing? As far as their turnaround time, what does that look like? What do they specialize in as far as, fabrics, and what do they have access to? There's a lot of questions that you could ask, and it's all according to what you're trying to produce, really.
Yeah. Did you go through, like, samples to find, like, the perfect shirt? Or, like, how many, I guess, iterations did you have to go through?
I go through them still.
So
this is actually a sample right here. This is actually a sample I'm wearing, which is not up to my likings.
I would say I like it because it got the tailored sleeves. I feel like some of those baggy ones, man, I can't wear them.
Yeah. I like the fit of everything. So the only complaint, I'm honest and transparent about these type of things. This sizing of the logo is not our preference. Okay. We like this to be extended to be actually fitting below the actual,
With the whole width.
I won't sell it, but I'll wear it.
Yeah.
And some people will not even notice and will say, hey, I want this shirt. And I'm like, I know my expectations on the shirt, so I won't sell it.
The standard, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want that to be baseline. And some things I don't even get to wear at all because I don't want nobody thinking that's something that we even market, so.
I like that because I know a clothing brand or the screen printing business.
Okay.
And when they misprint something, for like say a school or something, they will try to sell it misprinted at like a cheaper price. And it's it's like you said, that quality, like it's wrong, but you're gonna still try to make a couple bucks off it. It's like, just redo it,
Yeah. I mean, if you're honest about it, you're up front, you're telling them, you're pointing out the mistake.
I guess that's a good point.
Yeah, I can't be mad at it, but there's just some things that I won't let fly. Like there has been some things where like maybe a misstitch or something where I'm like, hey, if you want this, I'll take off some price for it. But if it's completely not up to my likings, I'm not going to put it out there.
Yeah, so besides the clothing, do you guys offer any other products at this time?
Yeah, so that's good. We're actually pushing, and this is the goal ultimately, is to shift spaces. Clothing is how we kind of get our capital in and sustain our business because we operate as a nonprofit. We're not a nonprofit, we're LLC, but we operate as far as our giving. None of us take anything from the business at all. So we want to move to the space of being able to provide speaking engagements and being, compensated for those.
Like motivation stuff?
Like typical, such as, transformational speaking is what we will call it. And then, mentoring. We want to we wanted to be able to offer mentoring services, which is such a journey right now, trying to create like a program for that, and just, everything that it takes to actually build something that's people want, and we know our hearts, we know our desires, we have it, an idea and a purpose, but to formulate it, it's taking some time, but in due time.
I feel like also something with the program, like once you get it up, it's still gonna be tweaked and stuff like that. There's always iterations and whatnot. So I like it though. I think especially with your message, right? I feel like the speaking thing is a good way to go.
That's the goal.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You're creating a whole ecosystem of what thinking is, and that can pay dividends in the future, both spiritually and financially too. Right. So good combination.
Right. And that's the idea. Just in community engagement, things like that is on our board as well. Really, it's funny because clothing is not like my niche at all. None of our niche. We just have to use it because it's what God gave us to speak to the people. Yeah. Because that's what speaks to the people within this generation right now. Clothing is like a real way to express oneself, and it's noticeable. There's music which people get, communicate through, express yourself through. There's multiple ways. We do it podcasts. But clothing is like by sight, you see it, so
it's kind of like advertisement too. But
it is.
When we went to Still Valley to speak to those kids for the Minnow Tank,
nice.
I think there was at least 4 to 5 kids. We asked what you want to do, what's your business idea, clothing brand.
Yeah.
And I feel like I never thought about that.
Me neither.
When I was in high school or starting businesses, that never really came to my mind at all. So it's kind of interesting, like you said, this generation, that's what they're looking to.
Yeah.
So
it is.
That's a good way to go.
Yeah, so 10 years from now, where do you see thinking? I know that's a hard question. 10 years is hard to forecast, but ideally, where do you see yourself? Like, how has the brand grown?
Yeah.
What are you currently doing within the brand?
That's great. It is. Even a year to year, it's hard to think about those things, Obviously, we like to acquire some space, to be able to house and a community space such as, so we can just have a plethora of different things that we can offer as far as, mentoring, like I mentioned.
That'd be good for the speaking aspect.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just, host things such as where we don't have to, use other people's resources and be able to just house that ourselves. That'll be like the big one that I would like to accomplish within 10 years. And all that comes under that umbrella of that would probably, be what all entails within that 10 years.
Very exciting stuff.
Yeah.
So
you're on your way.
Yeah.
We're trying.
We all know entrepreneurship is a roller coaster.
Yes.
And you started thinking at 23 years old.
Right.
Did you have any businesses before that? Or was this your first journey into entrepreneurship?
It's my first journey. And I never really thought about entrepreneurship until this journey. I was working full time. I didn't go to school or anything, so I had no real business education. I really don't, as far as legally,
Yeah.
I did my studies mostly throughout experience, really, to be honest. But I did not have any goals to be an entrepreneur, nor did I even really understand the space of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so to someone that's watching this, say they're in high school right now, and they're thinking, should I go to school? Should I start a business? What would your advice be to them on how to make that decision?
Right. So authentically, find what God's telling you to do, because I had consideration of school. I was supposed to go to the military. That didn't happen. That was like my 5-year plan, so that was like a huge turnaround for me. Beyond that, it was years later, and when Thinking came about, and I had this idea of clothing, and then I had to think about entrepreneurship. Then I had to think about owning a business. Then I had to think about all those components that come with that. So schooling was never in mind. What it takes for me to actually, what I need to know, what I have to learn to actually, sustain this business, let alone scale it, it was to know knowledge of me. But if you can, and if you need to get certain schooling, certain guidance of, education, do it by all means. If you can afford it, if it's within your will, within your way. I never count out school just because I didn't go. Education is very important. You have to be a student of life, no matter when we graduate school, whatever the case may be. So
I think self-learning is
it's
better,
great.
you know, for the most part. I mean, there's certain things that you obviously need that higher education for, but
Sure.
you know, I always say that if you don't need a degree, don't go to school. But like you
I
said,
agree.
you didn't have the knowledge to do anything with business, but
Right.
you learned along the way, and you learned what
Absolutely.
you specifically need to do for your
That's true.
business. You know, where a college class, you know, would just teach you general
Yeah.
business stuff. So you're kind of learning more niche down things, which is way more important. And you learn for yourself. So like it usually sticks more when you learn for yourself and not just hearing some teacher up there talking.
And that's what type of learner I am. That's what's hard for me. That's why I didn't really have interest in going to school beyond high school, because I just know me as a learner. I couldn't wait to graduate and go to the military and like actually not have to worry about schooling in a sense. But yeah, if you can be a self-learner, which I do, I love to learn. I'm a learner at heart. So if you can open your eyes and learn those things that are contagious to what you actually aspire to do, then go for it.
That's a
So,
good point.
did you have any influences in your life that pushed you towards entrepreneurship at all? Say any family, friends, anybody in the community? So I know we're all from the McKeesport area
Right.
where there aren't too many entrepreneurs there, frankly. And
Right.
if you are an entrepreneur, you're looked at like you have a third leg sometimes.
That's true.
So,
It's pretty odd, huh?
yeah. So what's your experience with
yeah,
that?
yeah. No one really in the community. Again, entrepreneur, at least as we know it, it's kind of new, you know, in a sense of us calling it entrepreneurship. Like it hasn't been highlighted until maybe some years ago, really.
Yeah, I guess there was like just like you're a businessman, right?
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. And when we heard business, it sounds scary to us because, especially coming from a key sport where nobody told me I could own a business one day, you know. So when you take entrepreneurship and it sounds more universal, where anybody can get into that, you know, that lane, it kind of, I think it took out the fear of, okay, well, I can actually, this is something I can actually get into. I don't even have to get my LLC to be considered an entrepreneur in a sense. It's kind of just me, you know, having something and owning it. Obviously, you want to get legal out one day, but I'm just saying, you know, for starters, you know, just in the mind concept.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, you start there. But what I realized real recently, though, my dad kind of instilled an entrepreneurship spirit into me, real indirectly, because he was just he was a carpenter. He was a general contractor, and he took me on a lot of jobs, you know, when I was younger, that I learned how to, you know, work for money without being employed in a sense. And I really didn't realize it until I had a conversation recently where I was like, you know, he kind of taught me how to be a serviceman at heart and how to earn my own money without working for someone. And I realized how that helps me now as an entrepreneur, let alone has it helped me just in a work field alone. But I'm realizing I created a spirit for me that I can kind of, you know, cultivate into my entrepreneurship journey. So
That's cool.
That's my main influence.
That subconscious, you know, been locked in there for a while, and finally
Yeah.
you realize what it meant. That's interesting.
Yeah, and you were mentioning the military before.
Yeah.
I know the military has a lot of values
Sure.
that would be beneficial with entrepreneurs. There's a lot of successful people that come out of the military and they create great businesses because of their discipline.
Right.
What made you decide not to go into the military and then choose the entrepreneurship route?
Oh, again, military is like my 5-year plan, which I decided in about my junior year of high school. So I was like, I never took a SAT. I'm like, I took my ASVAB, I passed it. I'm going to the military. I was all set. I was training with them and everything. We were P10 from my junior year to my senior year. And then my senior year came around, and it was time to go to MEPS and get the whole, you know, do the whole process of swearing in, enrollment. And I got flagged. I got flagged because a medical waiver. I had an inhaler usage in my history, which is no big deal because I didn't have asthma, which later I actually took pulmonary tests saying I didn't have asthma, but they were still so gung-ho on why is this in there, what is it? And they're just like, you know, they're seeing me perform and physical tests and everything, and they're like, we can't, the recruiters can't work around it.
That's all it takes is...
Wow. Unfortunately, you know,
That's a
as
common
needy as they
thing.
are, needy as
Yeah.
they are, you wouldn't think, right? But what I seen of it, God's will is God's will. I wasn't meant to go.
So it seemed like it worked out. I mean,
Yeah, I wasn't meant to go. So from there, again, I was like closer to my graduation when I found out I wasn't going to be able to go, and that was a big, you know, big hindrance to my 5-year plan, really. So when I found that out, I began to reevaluate some things. Months later, I tried the Army cause I tried the Marines at first, and then months later, I tried the Army because a recruiter reached out to me and was like, hey, he was following up on the process of me going. and I communicated on what happened, and he told me, hey, that's nothing, I can bypass that. Like, he's telling me all this good stuff, and meanwhile, so I went through the whole process again, and we go through the same MEPS. MEPS is MEPS. It's where you go from the office officials who actually make these decisions. Sure. So no matter what branch, you're going to the same.
You got flagged again?
Yeah, I got flagged again. Wow. I got flagged again. They're like, dude, what is this? So at this point, though, they gave me more indefinite news where they told me I wouldn't be able to go for another 2 years.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, at least I actually know, like, it's not an option within the next 2 years. And it was kind of good timing. It was like I graduated 2016, so it was kind of when Trump was getting in the office. Nobody knew how that was going to look. So it was like, okay, whatever signs you're giving me, God, I'll follow through with them. And I went with it. So from there, again, they told me 2 years. So from there, I went straight to the workforce and kind of just started to reevaluate my 5-year plan.
Okay. So after those 2 years, did you then try again, or did you kind of like, hey, I'm already, set up this way?
I counted it out. I said, like, I'm not going to put my life on hold. I felt like I was pretty fit to serve. So if I was fit then, now was the time.
Especially after 2 tries, right?
Yeah, 2 tries. I'm like, dude, I know y'all need people in there.
Persistence.
Yeah, I was like, this is pretty sad. I'm actually in shape. Like, I'm actually a decent
You're like
human.
Captain America, man. Like, he keeps trying. They won't let him over.
I'm like, all right, man. I'm not going to force my way in here because that ends bad. So, I took the L the second time with the Army because I was already selling at that point anyway. And to be honest, my heart wasn't with the military. My brain was. I was trying to run away from home. I just wanted to start over, a new environment, not have to worry about schooling, not have to worry about really, anybody, me depending on them in a sense to take care of me. I knew like I'll be more independent in that sense, but I found that independency, on my own within this environment. So.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I'm sure that had some ups and downs during that journey, mentally. And that's something that happens in entrepreneurship all the time, too. It's an emotional roller coaster. So when you're feeling down, say things aren't working out with your business and just life in general, as an entrepreneur, what are some coping mechanisms or things that you like to do and add to your routine to overcome those obstacles and get back onto the positive thinking?
That's a great question, especially being in the midst of it right now, honestly. Again, I'm a pretty spiritual person. I'm connected to God pretty heavily. He's my guy he guides me through a lot of things. So when things aren't going my way, I look to see what way he wants it to go. So I'm pretty still within it. I just try to evaluate things different ways. I'm a pretty perspectual person. So when something doesn't go my way, I look and see, which way is it supposed to go? Like, let's just put everything, line it up and see, what makes sense in a sense, even beyond my own logic. And I kind of just stay within that. I do what I'm supposed to do as far as, try to get the product in and try to get the merchandise in, try to still push the brand, make sure it has good visibility still, things like that. But again, we're not getting paid from it, so capital is not too important in our pockets. So, it doesn't hurt. It hurts, the things that we'll be able to do in the future. But in a standstill, even the finances are still good right now. They can afford for us to sustain. So just being considerate of those things and just trusting within, the season that you're in. Because every season, like you said, it's a roller coaster. Every season is not your season to harvest. So whatever season you may be in, it may be pruning season, it may be planting season, it may be harvest season. Whatever season you're in, just trust it.
Harvest season's always the best.
It's always the best. So
no,
it doesn't last as long as everything else.
That's
Bleeding, huh?
That's a great point, though, because, obviously we've had ups and downs, and it gets tough sometimes because, when things aren't going right, especially if they're consistently not going right, you kind of, almost lose that faith a little bit.
Sure.
Like that's going to turn around, and then you kind of, like, why am I doing this? Or, you kind of lose that confidence to keep going. So it's kind of a good way to look at, like, just keep calm, rationally look at everything. Sometimes you get emotional with this stuff too.
Sure.
So, kind of take a step back and just, hey, keep going along the path, and it'll work. Have faith it's going to work out.
Yeah, even when it wavers, like never jump off a ship. Just jump off a boat or a ship just because it's getting wavy. That's like my go-to. Like,
never heard
That's a
that
good
before.
quote.
I like that.
I just made it up, but it's my
Hey,
go-to.
you heard her first.
Putting it on thinking shirts.
That's it. But it's like my go-to, just in being still and understanding the storm. Just being calm within the storm, because they're necessary. Like, storms are necessary. Like, even just a storm I had once with thinking, where it backed me into a corner thinking, just, what are we doing this for? And it was those hardships that it took for me to really process and think that more thoroughly, where I actually, gained more understanding of the purpose within it. So it was like, the watering of the storm brought forth more growth within the seed. So
I also think looking at like every failure is, if you learn from it, it's not really a failure, right? Exactly. So, man, I just think keep pushing along and, figuring out what works.
I say, and every lesson's a blessing. Another thing I go by is, there's no bad experiences on which you can have. It's all about perspective. There will be experiences that are very much worth you to leverage within the future that probably looked like it was probably meant to destroy you, but it actually will create and cultivate things beyond your own understanding within a moment. So just, we're from a Keysburg, man. We have resiliency. Like, let's be real.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
Hey, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor, right?
That's it, though. That's
Throw
it.
that one out there.
Yeah,
What's up with these nautical references? I need something. Any port in the storm, right? That has nothing to do with this conversation, but that's the only.
Might have to edit that out.
Just rock the boat, man. Just rock the boat.
Yeah. So that was a great way to put it, going through all the different seasons of life, not getting down. Outside of entrepreneurship, I know you like to work out, and I know you like to eat healthy. You mentioned you do a plant-based diet.
Yes.
If you want to go into that a little bit, what does that entail?
So it's pretty new. I'm about almost a year in, actually. I lost count because I've been on a holistic health and wellness journey for about 3 years, and that kind of just built up just in a compound manner over the years what it looks like. Health and wellness is such an interesting journey. It's because it's such a spiritual thing as well. When you start to value your body in a certain sense, and you just you tend to it in a certain manner, and the things you learn, I learned along the way that you think you're good and they're really not. It's it's such a journey within itself, and it started plant-based again almost a year ago. And it was one of those things that God just told me to do, where it was I did some fasting, some detoxing and things like that, where I stayed away from meat, and I seen the difference within my body, my mental space. And once I kind of got just an ounce of taste of that, I was like, I want that forever. I don't want to lose that. And I went back and had some things that were not of meat. That were of meat. And I lost it, man. I lost the mental space I had, lost the creativity I had.
A little bit, yeah.
I was like, what's going on? And I realized I kind of understand just how the body works now with those things that, your body rejects, and those things that kind of pollute, your mentality in a sense, your mental space. So from there, I kind of I studied a little bit the journey of plant-based. And it wasn't plant-based for me. It's just holistic and whole eating. That's kind of where it was for me, and it just so happened where it was okay, meat's not good for you, dairy's not good for you, cheese isn't good for you, these things. So obviously, if you want to be good to yourself, stay away from those things. And it was hard, but it was also easy to surrender.
I feel like once you get going, it becomes easier, and it also kind of gives you that dedication aspect and keeps you on that schedule. Okay, if you want something that might not be in your diet, right? Okay, I'm not going to eat that, but I'm going to stick to my diet. I feel like it keeps you focused on everything. You might just be focusing on your diet that second, but everything else just kind of lines up and keeps that process going.
And that's a good point, because when it takes what it takes to be disciplined in your dietary ways is beyond dietary.
Exactly.
You got to actually me. I have to go to the gym. You have to have a sound mind and a sound body. So you just focus on dietary ways, nutritional ways alone, and maybe you have some commitment issues somewhere else in your life, you're going to fall short in this area as well. So it's it's more so character versus just, how you feel about food. And that's probably what sustains me a lot, because I commit myself to such things where I don't like to really be dishonest with myself. So if I tell myself I want to stay away from something, the mind's made up. I don't care how I feel. The mind is made up, and I'm going to stay away from it. So the hardest part is really finding the things to supplement what you originally ate. So
I agree. Yeah, with that. Yeah, you have to have some sort of vice or something like that to keep you going. But it's funny. I saw a quote that was if you say you work for a job, when you're in the workforce, and you're oh, work starts at 7. you're going to be there by 7, right?
Right.
But when you tell yourself the night before, I'm going to be at the gym at 7.
Come on.
When you wake up, you're like, oh, I'll go at 8. But if you were working for someone else, you would be there. But when you're working for yourself, you kind of do these negotiations with it. So having that dedication and like you said, not lying to yourself and kind of doing what you need to do, it makes things a lot easier.
Also about balance, because nobody's perfect, and I live off an 80-20 rule. That's what I lived off of before I even went plant-based. Something we teach in my holistic health and wellness coaching atmosphere. And it's all about, being intentional 80% and then 20% giving yourself the leisure to, kind of mess up. Even if you don't, but you have the leisure to do so. So if I'm intentional about going to the gym at a certain time 3 days a week, and then maybe Thursday and Friday I negotiate with myself, but I still go, hopefully, I can take that as a win, versus every day I'm negotiating with myself. And like you said, we do these things for, those who we are employed with, but we don't dedicate and commit ourselves to the same thing for ourselves. So, and that's what I'm sure you guys know, being full-time entrepreneurs is necessary, because when someone's telling you to be somewhere at a certain time, it's easy to be there. Yeah. But when you have to tell yourself to be there at a certain time, it's a little different.
Yeah. Completely different.
Yes.
So how important do you think exercise and nutrition is to being a successful entrepreneur?
Ooh, that's a great one. I would say almost 80%. And even in the subconscious of us not knowing that it's taking effect in our space of creativity, in our space of how we deal with consumers and things, such as how we just interact with other people, even being leaders, how you interact with maybe those who are staffing of you. It's huge on your character, the way you take care of your body, because when you love your body in a certain manner, you love other people in a certain manner. When you have respect for life of self, so in a certain manner, you respect other people's life in a certain manner. And again, like you said, as those things that you take in, you put out. So I roll with those values as far as my health and my wellness and fitness. So I say 80%.
So you're working all day, doing your stuff, right? And you don't get burnt out.
That too.
So especially we do a lot of computer work. And I'm sure you're on the computer a lot too, editing stuff or even just talking here. And you're always sitting. So working out and moving around. Mm-hmm. It kind of you think, you get tired. But for me, it wakes you up.
Energizes you.
And then it gives you those endorphins and then helps you, communicate with maybe your employees or just whoever you're talking to a little bit better. So, yeah, I think it's very important. And to keep you just on that having that system and keeping yourself dedicated, it kind of just makes everything else a little bit easier.
Yeah. Well, they say movement is medicine. Things such as, movement's medicine. They say food's supposed to be medicine. Things such as if you're consuming the right type of food, And when you consider those factors, it's going to make you perform a certain manner. And there's so many other variables between, the way we rest, the way we exercise, the way we eat, even, just the things we consume that are not tangibly, even conversation, like having healthy conversation is important. So there's so many variables of consumption that we need to take, consideration of the well-being of our body and our mind and our spirit in a sense. So all those things definitely add up.
Yeah, a friend of mine always compared being a business owner to being a professional athlete.
Nice.
And I always thought that was a fair comparison. I mean, maybe we don't make as much as professional athletes in some cases, some business guys do. And that's what we're looking to, achieve one day. Mm-hmm. But it really is to the point where you have to be on every second because you're making such big decisions. And not even the amount of decisions sometimes what weighs you down. It's just the repercussions of a decision. So, whatever you're going to do could either be a win for you,
make or break the business.
Yeah, maybe a year of delayed gratification on what you're trying to achieve.
That's
so
good.
Every thought, even as small as they are, can sometimes be a little overwhelming. But I've learned that you have to make those decisions pretty fast to be efficient.
That's
but
true.
Not every decision's obviously weighted equally.
And that's the value and the beauty of the gym to me. Because you look at the principles of fitness and nutritionally too, but there's just so many principles that, are instilled within it. Like when you go to the gym, like you just said, not everything's weighted equally. So when you go to the gym, which you might use in a gym to gain mass is not what he may use. You might be good with 20 pounds. He might need 30 pounds or vice versa. And it's like there's no, there's no subjective way that's, just for you and just for him that works. So just understanding the the diversity and the
Or kind of goes back to like figuring out your body, right? What works for you? 'Cause
right.
everything's a little bit different. Everyone can't have the same diet. You got to figure out what
Right.
works for you, and like you said, the gym, what works for you. And
yes,
I also think being there helps clear that head.
absolutely.
And lets you kind of subconsciously think about some of these things
Yes.
too, because it's hard to think about a big business decision when you're putting up 200 pounds or whatever.
Yeah.
You're probably putting up what 400.
I wish one day I aspire. That's it. No, it's just that it prepares you. So I say the gym prepares you things beyond, fitness. Whether you're an athlete, I never really been an athlete, but performance is still performance in life. So how you perform in the gym will show how you perform in life.
What piece of advice would you give to a viewer that's maybe not feeling the best in life? They're scared, they haven't started the business, they're not working out, and they feel like all of these things we're saying are just so overwhelming because we're giving them so much information.
Sure.
What's one piece of advice you would give them to get started?
Start. Seriously, pick a place of interest just to some degree that you can start. Maybe it won't be the most effective, but pick that place and just, cultivate there. Find consistency within it. So, like walking in the gym the first time, maybe you don't know nothing in here. You don't know how to use a machine. You don't know how to operate a system, but there's something in there that you like to do. Go do that thing and hold yourself to the accountability of just showing up and doing that one thing as far as you can to cultivate, and then you'll branch off and start to do more. Seed will beget seed while you're in there. You'll learn along the way from experience. You'll get motivated. Just your self-character will be built, and you'll be able to just, kind of scale yourself within that environment. And that's the same thing with business to me. Find where you can thrive at, or even just be, decent at, and you have interest there, and just cultivate there. Because, you're not meant to play every role, to the same extent. You're just not.
That's a great point. Just get there, right? Whether it's walking on the treadmill and watching a Netflix series on your phone, like once you get in there, do that for a couple weeks, then maybe you just take a look around, right? Oh, that guy's benching. That's how you do it, right?
Yeah.
Or they're using that machine. I'll try it out next time.
Yep.
But getting started, and like you said, seeing some of these results, and then that motivates you to go further and to branch off. So I think you said just get started, man. You mentioned that, I think, one of the last podcasts, like just do it.
Yeah.
And then, you're going to figure it out along the way.
You will.
Yeah, another thing I'd like to add to that, do it, but don't even tell anybody you're doing it either.
I love that actually.
Because the outside energy will always
They'll bring
mess
you
you
down.
up. And
Unless you're built for it. If you can take the outside noise and it won't drown you, and eventually at some extent it will drown anybody out. But yeah, I agree. Do it in secrecy, and because when you're doing things for yourself and you understand your intent behind it, you don't need to tell anybody else for gratification.
And there's a lot of good people out there, but I do feel like,
Sure.
It's out that you mentioned like the 80-20. I almost feel like 80% will put you down where 20 will build you up. So you guys try to surround yourself with that 20. But there are a lot of people that will see you trying to better yourself, and they will not like it.
yeah.
Intentionally, and sometimes it's again subconscious and unconsciously. There's some people who don't just see the betterment for themselves, that they can't see it for within you or how you're trying to do it. At least sometimes there's people who do see the betterment within themselves, but the route that you're taking is not the route that they took.
Yeah,
so
that's
they're
a good
like,
point.
you're doing it wrong, and it's like, no, you don't know my destination, so you don't understand my my direction within this. And sometimes, some of us are hard-headed, and we like to make our mistakes anyway. So if I say I'm going this way and it's a dead end,
Yeah.
if I you gave me advice,
Well, plus they also might be new to it, right? And
Sure.
they're just getting started. They might not know what a 20-year bodybuilder knows. Of course, how
Right.
could they? So, of course, he's going to say something to, not him personally, but
Yeah.
someone with that experience might think you're not doing it wrong. But,
Right.
you got to learn for yourself sometimes. Like you said, make some mistakes along the way, and
Yeah,
you'll figure them out.
it's
Yeah.
necessary.
So when started thinking, you mentioned that you had a lot of pre-orders, a lot of people really supporting you within the community, which is great. That's awesome to be able to pre-sell stuff like that and already have a following. On the opposite end of that, did you have anybody putting down the brand or not supporting you that you thought would have? We don't have to say any specific names. But
Actually, to this day, I haven't heard a bad remark about the brand.
oh, wow.
And I say that whole humbly and with all humility.
Good for you.
I'm sure there's been something out there, but it hasn't
Yeah,
coming back to
that's-
me. And even just those who I've collaborated with, it's been nothing but love. And I truly believe, again, that's because that's what all we operate with. And we never really, we had no agenda. I mean, our capital is going straight to, the account that's not being touched. I mean, so how can we take offense to, it's not paying our bills and those manners where we're kind of attached to the financial side of it. So all we are moving within is genuine, support of other people. So, there might have been very select feedbacks where, maybe a piece of merchandise had some type of, misfunction in it.
Yeah,
or,
defective.
Defective.
Like that,
Yes, that's the word. And we corrected it accordingly. Again, that's the part of being a business owner as well. You address those faults that come by inevitably. So beyond that, I can't say we heard anything that wasn't to our liking.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes, well, give us some years. I'm sure we'll have more
as you get bigger. Right?
Yeah, I'm
more
sure.
and more
Right?
people.
No, that's good. Yeah, because I feel like we talked about it earlier that we've had a couple people like that, and you're one of the people that we've mentioned on the outside conversation. We're like, we've had these friends for 10, 12 years, or friends, right, in quotes, and they kind of might murmur what we call heckle a little bit on the side. But
yeah, sure.
we met Desmond 6 months ago. He showed more support than most people we've known for 20 years. So
maybe he's just more likable than us.
I mean, look at that smile,
no,
baby.
No, man, nah. I just, so for me, it's just your mission. I don't know. Maybe it's the thing about being from a key sport as well. There's that too. There's a spirit there, but it's just it's pretty kindred, and I'm just like, I love to see people who are doing well for themselves and just aspire to give back. Your initial walkthrough through this environment was already giving, so and it wasn't about the financials at all. It was about the fact that you've seen the vision here and you wanted to support it, and that for me just speaks a lot of volume.
Yeah, we appreciate it, man.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, you're a serial entrepreneur like we are, and besides thinking, which we've been highlighting on this episode, you also have a podcast, Morality Support.
Yeah.
So what values do you instill in there that are different than thinking?
Yes, so moral support, which is definitely a branch to thinking that was like not intentional at all, because the guy I shoot with that on, he's not attached to thinking in any manner, but he's attached to me as just being a brother. And when it was innovated, it was, again, another organic thing that kind of birthed itself, because we would just have authentic conversations, and we were like, dude, I'm sure like everybody has, like, this needs to be a podcast. Like, somebody else needs to hear this. But it was like always things like beyond entertaining each other. It was things that like got us through life, things like
deeper conversations.
It was deep conversations, pretty intimate conversation. And we're like, this is just too good to keep to ourselves. So over the years, we kind of just planted the seed, and he was actually in another state at the time. He was in California. So once he actually came back to PA, and we're like, we let it give some time, and we're like, how about that podcast? And we were in every position to do it, as far as this atmosphere, as far as already having equipment to do so. So, we sought out some names and some ideas, and we kind of just ran with it from there.
Yeah, what advice would you give to somebody that wants to start a podcast because they have good conversations, but they're scared of being on camera?
Part 2, just do it. I'm gonna keep saying
Get over it.
Yeah, I'm serious, because and I stopped myself from doing it anymore, because people were just like, okay, that's getting old. But I wasn't a speaker, man. I was not a talker. Like, it was over the reps of me actually talking that I became a talker. Now, I always was one who had something to say, but I didn't care to say things, So over the years of being in positions to have to talk, in a sense, just being able to communicate to people, I developed, a voice and structure within the voice. And it's just that alone, obviously there's so many ways you go about as far as equipment, as far as, the camera and the audio and all those things. That varies, but beyond that, like, just do it, have a purpose though. I'm very firm on that, because if you enter this space trying to amplify your voice, and you have I always say it's value over volume. Because you can have this loud voice on here, this perfect voice, but if you're not giving substance throughout, what you're actually saying, I just don't see it to be worth it. That's my own personal opinion. And it throughout the journey, you won't be motivated, because you kind of just want to give something that's people don't really have a need for, So, just have a purpose behind it. Have a purpose that can be supportive to, the viewers in some manner, whatever your niche is, whatever way. Like, you guys are pretty intentional about who you bring on here, I'm sure, and there's some support.
On that point, like, we're kind of in that new podcast. Like, this is only the 4th episode, and, before our first one, we practiced a lot because, George has always been a good speaker. Like, I'm okay, but it feels weird talking on camera, right? But going back to the purpose, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many texts between me and George, like what's this podcast be about? It was like, went from this, and it just bounced so many ideas because it's so important, right?
It is.
Now we have guests on, sharing their stories and their experience, but that is so important, and to have a direction, because if not, you're just talking random stuff over here, right? Like, you can't really, and you can't like hone in on your audience either.
Yeah, it's hard because like, who are you trying to feed? Like, how do you know your audience if you don't know what you're giving them? It's like being in the kitchen. Like, how do you know what to feed them if you don't even know who's out there ready to, order on the menu? So, just know what's on your menu.
Yeah. So besides mission, you mentioned reps,
yes,
which I believe in as well. You have to do so many reps to get good at anything. How many podcasts did you have to record till you think you found your voice?
Okay, so like you guys did, we definitely recorded some podcasts that were unofficial, unreleased. There was those, and that was more so just really for the technicals of things. Really,
that's kind of how ours are.
Yeah,
just to make sure everything, because we never did anything like this. We're living on the fly still.
Right,
so.
Exactly. So that was like the reps in that, just practicing the technicalities and making sure that when we shoot this grand episode is actually going to premiere somewhere. So it was like just doing that. We probably did like 3 of those behind the scenes before we actually launched one. And again, when we shot our first one, it wasn't like, I never ditched the episode of a podcast before, so if we shot it and this was meant to premiere, it's going to premiere, and we do it all authentically. We don't cut anything, mostly off of the fact that we just like our raw footage to be that. And I'm not a great editor anyway, so I'm like, if we can keep this authentic, it saves a lot of time, because I've started off in the process of doing a lot of other features within the podcast that jazzed it up and stuff, but it delayed my work so much, so I failed the hit the mark sometime where it was like, okay, I'd rather just have a decent quality of production, but a great episode, and launch it at a consistency versus me trying to jazz it all up and delayed and
it's almost like diminishing returns.
Right.
Putting an extra couple days, like, is it worth that? Probably not.
Things that people don't even pay attention to as well.
I mean, but you helped us out with I don't know if it's Opus or Opus.
Yes,
but
Opus,
that software is great for the shorts.
I didn't have that when I started off.
Well, it's funny because when we had Hit on last week, he mentioned it. He's like, "Are you using?" He's like, "Let me look it up." And I was like, "Is it Opus?" And he was like, "I was like, yeah." Our boy Desmond told us about it, so he was about it too. So
nice.
Yeah, finding softwares that kind of use AI to do stuff like that definitely cuts on the editing, because I know a little bit using Premiere, but it still takes some time. So.
It does. I use Final Cut. I started off with iMovie, then I developed the Final Cut, and sometimes it does.
But it is a lot. I think it's a lot easier when you don't make those cuts, like you said. Just use the raw footage. I mean, you gotta link the audio, but outside of that, snippet here, and that's really it. So.
That's what most people are watching, are the nuggets.
What would you say the advantage is of doing raw footage versus having something that's very polished and edited?
Well, again, knowing your audience, we like to have a relationship, and we're building community throughout our audience. So it's pretty unfair to not be us when we're trying to reach out to people and actually have a relationship. So, we don't want to filter. We don't want to catfish anybody in any sense. That's so, just allowing other people to see it. And it goes a long way, because people see you off camera and they're like, hey, you're the same person that was up there. And it's like, what did you expect? But we know Hollywood.
I was just saying, nowadays, man, you look at some of these like Instagram models and fitness models, like they're completely different. Outside of that, so I like the authenticity behind it, and it's easier.
That too.
So.
Yeah, I believe with you. Well, I'd say it's easier on the work after the podcast, but to have something that's continuous, you have to be more
sharp. Yeah,
sharp during.
I agree.
That's a good point.
I agree.
Yeah, it's not all about, you're not going to be saved by the fancy images or
Right.
B-roll or
Right.
AI touches and stuff.
That's a good point. Yeah, you got to be kind of more on your game. But hey, we're professional athletes, right? So it's like, you don't get a second take for Game 7.
And that's it though, and that's the reality in it. You practice, you still be intentional about running your route a certain manner. You have a play that you're running, but I think sometimes we think being organic and authentic means you have no idea what you want to go in there and do. And it's like, no, I have an idea. Like you vet your people out. You have questions formulated that maybe they can be written down, and it's still not planned in a sense where you're having authentic conversations still.
I mean, when I took our speech class at Penn State, like she always said, master your speech, don't memorize it, because you have kind of those bullet points, and you kind of know where you want it to go a little bit, but then you just let it go and see how it kind of takes you. But you kind of hit on these key factors, but if you're memorizing like a script, like this is not scripted clearly, but if you mess up on a word, now you're like, oh, where am I, right? So you kind of panic a little bit, and it's not organic at all. So
I'm terrible at that.
I never, like all my speeches, I never have a script. I have a script when I'm practicing, but never take it up because I don't want it to follow something. I just want it to come out naturally, and it usually follows it pretty well, but there's little tweaks. Every speech is just a little bit different when you practice.
That's true. And all depending on what you're speaking to. I've been blessed enough to mostly use my voice for things that I have a heart for and actually have a general interest in. So it's not that I talk about it. Like you asking me about the brand, you asking about, just my life. It's pretty easier to do that versus you talking about politics or something that I really don't have as much interest in.
So for your podcast, if you could have one dream guest on it, who would it be?
Wow. I never thought about that one. That's a great question. I have to get back to you on that one. I really never thought, because we just started doing really, guests in a sense as far as moral support. On Tony's Table Talk, which is the first podcast we produced, all of our guests were pretty much people in our inner circle. So people who actually, were in alignment with the vision, maybe even were, help and service along the way, and just had value such as. So to think about an actual guest to outsource, I got to think about that.
Get back to us.
You said I don't need any guests.
Yeah, no, I ain't saying that.
I'm just messing around.
Nah, that's good though.
That's a good question, though.
It is. You
I think when we were
now.
doing our practice, takes,
Okay.
he asked me that, and I was shocked too. I was like panicked. I was like, what, are you talking about living or just overall? And I don't think I answered it either because that's such a hard question. There's so many.
If I had to say anybody, I'll say Tom Brady. Let's do it. That's my guy.
Yeah, that'd be a pretty cool person.
That's my guy.
Yeah.
Definitely get a lot of views.
Win. That's a win.
So with the podcast and thinking, the podcast more specifically, since I already asked you about thinking, where do you see that in 5 to 10 years?
We like to just develop and cultivate in an organic manner. All things I do, any seed that's ever planted within me, I like for it to go, how it's supposed to go and beyond my own understanding. But I would love to have a controlled space where we're able to have a stationary setup. That would be a huge goal. I kind of want to have like a whole community vibe in where we shoot, and just allow it to have the awareness of our brand, allow it to have the identity of our brand and the podcast. So building that in some manner, and then I can't wait within 5 years I would pray we have a team. We have a production team. So that's a huge goal. I've been doing a lot of the production and editing and you name it, narration and everything else behind podcasts for these years. And I learned it all along the way. So I can't wait to actually have a team where I can be hands off and just show up, sit down, and record.
We're going to have to get like half and half on that. Like, you get half the space, we get half, and we need to get a team because
let's do it.
That's kind of, I guess, our goal eventually, too, with this
podcast,
to have some sort of production team and not to worry about it.
Keep the overhead low, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And what God speaks to me and he tells me, there's going to be somebody who comes along the way who actually just cares for the vision. And not to say they're going to want, no compensation, but we'll be in position to compensate them accordingly, or they'll just, be able to ride out whatever ride that's necessary for them to ride out without compensation, or to whatever degree that we're able to give it.
Plus, even if they have the passion for the brand and the message, right, they're going to work a little extra harder. It's just in human nature, right? If you're just getting paid and it's transactional, well, you're just trying to get the job done.
Right.
Whereas if that person has that passion, they're going to go above and beyond to make it as good as possible. So I think that's good. Hopefully find someone, right?
Yeah, that's important. And again, I'm not looking for them, so they'll find us. So that's like what God gave it to me. So In due time. Hopefully within that 5 years.
Within the 5 years.
Yeah.
5-year plan.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Well, Desmond, it's great having you on here.
It's a pleasure.
Do you have any closing words for these greedy pigs out here?
Yeah. Oh, man. Be you. That's what I tell everybody. Be you. Find out who you are, and be it in fullness. Whatever you aspire to do, just make sure that it's rooted within something, not only of positivity, but of purpose and love. Beyond that, you'll find everything that's meant for you.
Well, there you have it. Desmone Stanford, owner of Think King. Give them a follow on Instagram.
Moral support as well, podcast.
Thank you.
And you currently have a website for Thinking?
Yes, sir. So thinkingest.org, Instagram thinking_mentality, moral support the pod. And you can find me at Desi_fresh.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, man. We appreciate it.
Hey, greedy pigs out there, make sure you subscribe. All right.
There you go.